Welcome back to our video series on working with addictive drums from Recording School Online. All right, we've actually accomplished a lot very quickly, and that's one of the things that I like about addictive drums is it's quite fast. And having talked to a lot of students, one of the things that a lot of people don't like is having to get hung up on working with the drums. And the people at Addictive Drums really thought that through and came up with a drum module that is quite fast to use. All right, now let's work with the snare a bit. Click on snare, and I've already set up a little bit here to save some time. Just like we saw when we were working with our kick drum, I've set up the compressor and the EQ. Different settings, but similar, and I'll explain to you why. First, let's listen. Sounds pretty good. Now, a general rule of thumb is in working with the ratio, you don't want to get too intense with it. Generally speaking, you may want to stay between 2-to-1 and under. And I'll tell you why. When you're working with samples, there's already some compression that occurs. And there's some consistency in these samples, so you don't need to overcompress like you might want to do with a real snare. So there's a difference between working with acoustic drums and working with samples. Now, you don't want to get too quick with the attack in working with drums simply because you'll deaden the transients. You want to allow some of those transients through to keep the drums sounding natural. By the same token, you don't want to overdo the release time of the compressor simply because it'll deaden the dynamics. And that's something you don't want to do. You want to avoid that. So right off the bat, look at our settings. We've lowered our threshold to -30 just to get a little bit going through. In other words, what's being compressed is just shown here. And the compression is nice in order to make it up the drum a bit more dense. We've added some top end or upper mid range on our EQ. Cool. Now, let's say I want to go back to the kick drum and control how that kick drum responds overall. Because back in the days of working with acoustic drums, I always liked to dampen them just a bit. Now, this drum's not too bad, but let's switch that up for a second. That's got a long decay, but it's a nice sounding drum. Let's listen to this version of it. That's even more obvious. We'll work with a softer one. Now, in order to dampen that, as if we were placing, let's say, a pillow or some sort of other material inside, we can go over to our volume control and pull this back a bit. Okay, you're beginning to hear that's too much. You want to have enough decay for it to sound natural. That's better. Or maybe just a hair longer. Let's hear that with the whole kit. Nice. Now what if we wanted that even a little deeper? We can go to pitch here and lower from the main setting just a bit. Cool. Nice. Okay, we're progressing nicely. Let's take that a little bit further and get into some of the saturation. So let's play it. The saturator. Now we bring it down until we see the light come on. And that's actually kind of putting a saturation limiter at the end of that chain through our compressor and EQ just to even that out. That's a lot of control. It's quite nice. Nice. Let's move on to the next video.